Today we have a head-to-head battle to see if you really need to spend that extra $300 to $400 to move up another performance tier. Now let's start round one. Hey Ultrawide fans, I'm Scott and I'll be officiating this battle. Round one will be a knockdown, drag-out fight of Raster performance between the Zotac RTX 4080 in the green corner and the Sapphire Pulse Radeon RX 7900 XT in the red corner. They will be fighting across 10 games and 4 resolutions of 4K Ultrawide, 1440p Super Ultrawide, 1600p Ultrawide, and 1440p Ultrawide. The battleground will be my test system featuring an AMD R7 5800X 3D CPU, 32GB of G-Skill Trident Z 3200MHz CL14 DDR4 on an Asus Crosshair Hero motherboard, powered by Seasonic Prime Titanium 1000W PSU, and running Windows 11 using the latest AMD and Nvidia drivers. Let the battle begin. Our cards will be looking for a stealthy kill on Assassin's Creed Valhalla, played at its ultra-high preset. Here we see both cards delivering good performance, with 7900 XT sticking close to the 4080 in this title. At 4K Ultrawide, we see both cards delivering smooth gameplay averages, with the 4080 delivering 71 FPS and the 7900 XT 64 FPS. Only a 10% performance difference. Both cards' 1% lows do drop into acceptable territory. At 1440p Super Ultrawide, we see another tight contest, with both cards falling shy of our 90 FPS high refresh rate threshold, with the 4080 coming in at 88 FPS and the 7900 XT at 82. Moving to our 1600p Ultrawide, we see our cards leaping into high refresh rate territory, with 105 and 96 FPS respectively. Both cards' 1% lows now stay above 60. Though the 7900 XT is trailing a bit further behind than previous resolutions. At 1440p Ultrawide, the trend continues, with the 7900 XT at 109 FPS, sticking close to the 4080 at 116 FPS. This game was a pretty strong showing for the 7900 XT, staying within 7 to 10% of the 4080's average, and having tighter 1% lows at 4K, but looser as you went down in resolution. Next, they will be getting into some wacky antics in Borderlands 3, played at badass preset. Here we see our first game where the 7900 XT is not cutting it at 4K Ultrawide, delivering only 55 FPS, keeping it in acceptable territory, while the 4080 is delivering smooth experience at 70 FPS. At the 1440p Super Ultrawide resolution, the 7900 XT gets its feet back, delivering a smooth 75 FPS and keeping its 1% low over 60. The 4080 delivers a high refresh rate gaming experience at this resolution, delivering 95 FPS. At 600p Ultrawide, the 4080 continues to steam along, delivering 112 FPS, while the 7900 XT climbs to just below the high refresh rate threshold. At 1440p Ultrawide, we see that the 4080 makes it to very high refresh rates, crossing the 120 FPS line, and the 7900 XT is now delivering high refresh rates of 104 FPS. The 1% low scaling in this game stays roughly the same for both cards. Next up, our cards are racing for the win in Forza Horizon 5, running at its new Extreme preset. Here we see the game scales better with raw power than resolution, with the 4080 delivering higher 1% lows than the 7900 XT is able to deliver average frame rate. At 4K Ultrawide, we see 88 FPS for the 4080 and 71 FPS for the 7900 XT. We even see the 7900 XT's 1% lows drop below 60. Our Super Ultrawide resolution sees high refresh rate gameplay with the RTX 4080 of 103 FPS, and even its 1% lows stay in high refresh rate at 91 FPS. The 7900 XT is delivering 80 FPS average and 1% lows of 60 FPS. This keeps everything in smooth gameplay territory. Moving to the 1600p, we see both the 4080 and the 7900 XT cards inching up to hit 111 FPS and 87 FPS respectively. Finally, at 1440p, we see the 4080 kissing the 120 FPS barrier, with the 7900 XT sneaking over the high refresh rate line to get 91 FPS. Forza Horizon is another game where the 4080 seems to earn its price, especially in its 1% low showing. The 7900 XT never felt jittery in the gameplay, but it did perform between 24 and 30% slower in average frame rate, and 37-51% slower in 1% lows, with the 7900 XT being strongest at higher resolutions. Our cards are dressed to kill in Hitman 3 running at its ultra settings. At 4K we see the 4080 has a decent lead, bringing in 100 FPS to the 7900 XT's 82. Though both cards have pretty low relative 1% lows, with the 7900 XT dipping into acceptable territory with 54 FPS lows. At 1440p Super Ultrawide, both cards shoot up in performance, with the 7900 XT delivering 114 FPS average, closing the gap on the 4080 that came in at 124 FPS, giving the 4080 only a 9% performance advantage. But the gap between average frame rate and 1% lows grows for both cards, with the 1% lows delivering just over half the performance of the average frame rate. At 1600p we see the trend continue, with the 4080 delivering 136 FPS and the 7900 XT delivering 130, putting both averages in very high FPS territory, but both of their 1% lows stay concerningly low. And finally, at 1440p Ultrawide, we see the 4080 and 4090 XT neck and neck at 144 FPS and 141 FPS respectively. And in the 1% lows, the 7900 XT actually gets the better of the 4080. This is a strong showing for the 7900 XT, nearly matching the 4080 at all resolutions under 4K Ultrawide. But it's hard to be too excited about the very high average refresh rate we are seeing with both cards, when the 1% lows are averaging around half the FPS. In Horizon Zero Dawn, running at its ultimate quality preset, we see our cards fight over the world they are hoping to create. At 4K Ultrawide, we see the 4080 deliver nice smooth 83 FPS, with 1% lows only 11 FPS lower at 72. The 7900 XT does stay above 60, with its average FPS coming in at 66, but its 1% lows dip into acceptable range at 53 FPS. Moving to 1440p Super Ultrawide, we see performance skyrocket up over 60% for both cards, with the 4080 now delivering very high refresh rate performance at 137 FPS, and the 7900 XT coming in at 107 FPS. We do see both cards lose an extra 10% performance at the 1% lows at this resolution. Moving to 1600p Ultrawide, we see both cards experience the anomaly of this test run, where the higher vertical resolution is harder to run than the higher horizontal resolution of Super Ultrawide. Needless to say, both the 4080 and 7900 XT are still performing quite well, delivering 128 and 102 FPS respectively, with a similar relative 1% low showing. Now, at 1440p Ultrawide, we see the FPS climb back up, with the 4080 delivering 146 FPS and the 4090 XT 116 FPS. With the 1% lows, we see the 4080 put in a similar performance, but the 7900 XT tightens up a lot, beating the 4080's relative performance by 10%. Overall, this game does well for the 4080, though the 7900 XT provides extremely playable frame rates at Super Ultrawide resolutions and below. Our two cards will be battling in a quip-off while playing Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy at its Ultra preset. Let me just address the elephant in the graph. The 7900 XT's 1% lows in this game are bad, ranging from 47 to 54% lower than the average frame rate. This drop in frame rate manifests itself in visible stuttering at all resolutions, though they are almost ignorable at 1440p Ultrawide. AMD has some driver work to do to ensure smooth performance in this game. While the 4080 provides middle-of-the-road 1% low performance in our 3 Ultrawide resolutions of around 23% lower performance, and it shows a relatively poor performance on the Super Ultrawide, with a performance drop of 35% for the 1% low. Now, looking at average frame rate for both cards, we see some very good performance, with our 4K results for the 4080 and the 7900 XT coming in at 105 and 84 FPS respectively. At 1440p Super Ultrawide, we see our averages jump up to 139 and 108 FPS, bringing the 4080 into very high refresh rate territory and the 7900 XT to high refresh rate. At 1600p, we see our 4080 getting 161 FPS, and the 7900 XT joining it at very high refresh rates by getting over the 120 Hz line, delivering 127 FPS. Finally, the 1440p Ultrawide, where the 4080 delivers a stunning frame rate of 180 FPS, just making it into the super high refresh rate territory, with the 7900 XT putting in a very nice 143 FPS of its own. This game by default is a win for the RTX 4080. It delivered a respectable 26% performance improvement of the average frame rate pretty much across the board, and didn't suffer from stuttering or poor 1% lows. Our cards take their battle online with Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six Extraction, running on its Ultra preset with resolution render set to fixed 100%. At 4K, we see the 4080's biggest win, at this resolution delivering 110 FPS versus the 7090 XT's 74 for a 49% performance advantage, though with very similar 1% low ratios between the two cards. Moving to 1440p Super Ultrawide, we see the 7900 XT close the average performance gap, delivering 118 FPS to the 4080's 155 for a difference of 32%, though the 4080 does provide 9% tighter 1% lows at this resolution. Next, at 1600p Ultrawide, we see high performance from both cards, with the 4080 delivering 177 FPS and the 7900 XT delivering 139 FPS for a difference of 27%, though the 7900 XT loosens its 1% low ratio to fall 17% behind the 4080. Lastly, we have 1440p Ultrawide, where we see both cards at screaming refresh rates, with the 4080 at super high refresh rates delivering 204 FPS and the 7900 XT delivering 164 FPS, tightening the gap another little bit to a 24% performance difference. The 7900 XT also recovers a little on the 1% lows, only having a 14% worse scaling ratio. This game is a big W for the 4080, with an average frame rate advantage of 33%, delivering on its MSRP promise, while also maintaining a 10% better 1% low ratio. Time for our cards to go treasure hunting with Laura in Shadows of the Tomb Raider, played at its highest preset. The tables have turned back to the 7900 XT's favor, with it delivering a smooth 80 FPS to the 4080's 88 at 4K Ultrawide. Both cards are delivering better than average 1% lows here, with 19 and 13% drops respectively. At our 1440p Super Ultrawide resolution, we see even tighter game, with the 4080 delivering 121 FPS and the 7900 XT 113 FPS, and the 1% low scaling also sees a bit of a tightening. Playing at 1600p will net you 139 FPS on the 4080 and 132 FPS on the 7900 XT, with the 1% low gap staying much the same. And it's more the same story at 1440p Ultrawide, with even more performance pushing the 4080 and 7900 XT to reach 160 and 153 FPS respectively, with no change to the 1% low levels. In this game, the 7900 XT really makes the 4080's price look unjustified, with a mere 7% performance difference between the two cards. Cyberpunk 2077 is here to rip these cards apart with its Ultra preset with FSR turned off. At 4K Ultrawide, we see no card is safe, with both cards delivering sub 60 FPS performance, with the RTX 4080 just barely able to cling on to acceptable performance bracket at 46 FPS, and the RX 7900 XT at just 3 FPS lower dips into unacceptable performance territory with a 43 FPS average, just a 7% performance difference, and both cards 1% lows, while having better than average ratio, are stuck in unacceptable performance territory at 40 and 35 FPS respectively. Moving down to 1440p Super Ultrawide, we see performance for both cards jump nearly 50%, with the 4080 now delivering 70 FPS average and the 7900 XT delivering 64 FPS, a 9% performance difference, with 1% lows for both cards still dipping into acceptable territory at 53 and 49 FPS respectively, delivering a playable frame rate for both cards. At 1600p, we see the 4080 deliver 81 FPS average, and its 1% low clearing the smooth gameplay threshold, landing at 65 FPS, and the 7900 XT not too far behind at 75 FPS average and a 57 FPS 1% low. Lastly, at 1440p Ultrawide, we see that the 4080 breaks into high refresh rates at 98 FPS, and the 7900 XT delivering 89 FPS, still just 9% behind the 4080. Here we see our 1% lows deviate a little on the Radeon side, sliding from 24% reduction at the previous resolution to a 33% reduction in performance, while the 4080 stays relatively steady at 23% performance loss for the 1% low. For a game that I think in most people's minds is tied to Nvidia GPUs, it seems as long as you're not ray tracing, AMD is providing you a much better value per frame, with only an 8% average performance disadvantage. In Total War Warhammer III at the Ultra preset, using the battle simulation, our cards will be fighting off demons to get every frame they can. At 4K, we again see a game that can bring these new titans low, with both the 4080 and the 7900 XT falling below an average 60 FPS at only 54 and 45 FPS respectively, both landing in acceptable range. Even though we see some pretty tight 1% lows at this resolution, it can't save the 7900 XT's frame rate from dipping into unacceptable territory, where the 4080 manages to stay in acceptable frame rate territory with a 47 FPS 1% low, which is actually a playable frame rate for this type of game, which is good for the 4080 and bad for the 7900 XT, because this game has no DLSS or FSR to save your frame rate bacon. At 1440p Super Ultrawide, we see both cards recover into smooth gameplay territory at 73 FPS for the 4080 and 62 FPS for the 7900 XT, though while the 4080's 1% lows stay in the smooth gameplay range at 67 FPS, the 7900 XT's still dips into acceptable frame rates at 49 FPS. The 7900 XT sees lower 1% lows to a still below average 21%, while the 4080 tightened to just an 8% performance loss. At 1600p Ultrawide, we see the 4080 still in smooth performance range with 84 FPS average and a 74 FPS 1% low. The 7900 XT delivers a 71 FPS average, but its 1% low is still stuck in acceptable range at 56 FPS. Finally, at 1440p Ultrawide, we see the 4080 get to high refresh rate, with its average sitting at 97 FPS and its 1% low at 84 FPS. The 7900 XT also clears the threshold with an 84 FPS average and its 1% low finally joining it in smooth gameplay range with 63 FPS. With the 4080's performance advantage at only 17% across the board, that is not a very compelling result for the price difference of these cards. Now that we have seen how all the individual fights went, we can combine all the results and see where each card stands. At 4K Ultrawide, we see the 4080 averaging 81 FPS, while the 7900 XT sees a 67 FPS average for a 22% performance difference, while the 1% lows came in at 66 FPS for the 4080, representing a 19% performance dip, versus the 50 FPS of the 7900 XT, representing a 25% performance dip. That brings it below our smooth gameplay line. Moving to 1440p Ultrawide, we see a high 30s increase in performance, bringing the 4080 and the 7900 XT into high frame rate territory, with an average frame rate of 110 FPS and 92 FPS respectively, representing a 20% performance advantage for the 4080. For our 1% lows, the 4080 produces 84 FPS, a relative dip of 24% from average, and the 7900 XT produced a 64 FPS average, achieving smooth gameplay for its 1% low, representing a 31% dip in performance from average. At 1600p Ultrawide, the 4080 passes the very high refresh rate threshold, hitting 123 FPS, while the 7900 XT manages 105 FPS for an 18% performance advantage for the 4080. The 1% low for the 4080 managed to make it into high refresh rates, with 94 frames per second, a 24% drop from the average. And the 7900 XT's 70 FPS 1% low is a 33% drop from its average frame rate. Finally, we have 1440p Ultrawide, where the 4080 keeps delivering very high refresh rates of 139 FPS, while the 7900 XT just misses out on that threshold by 1 FPS, coming in at 119 FPS, which is a 16% advantage for the 4080. The 4080's 1% low comes in at 103 FPS, a 26% drop from its average, while the 7900 XT delivers an 80 FPS 1% low, a 33% drop from its average. Across all resolutions, the 4080 comes out to 19% faster for average frame rate and 31% faster on the 1% low. Even if we remove the disastrous Guardians of the Galaxy for the 7900 XT and the Hitman 3 results for the 4080, the RTX 4080 would still have a 26% faster 1% low. When we look at our price to performance graphs, we see that even at MSRP, at every resolution, the 4080 costs more per frame on average. Across all resolutions, you're looking at paying an extra $1.15 per frame. Even if you look at the 4080's 1% lows, giving the 4080 the biggest advantage we can, we still see you're paying an extra 21 cents per frame. Now, if we look at current pricing for both GPUs, which is defined by the low bar of having 2 or more variants of a GPU in stock at that price to be considered the lowest available price. Using this metric, we can find the 7900 XT for its MSRP price, while the 4080 is $100 more expensive than its MSRP, which means you're now averaging $2.06 more per average frame rate and $1.40 more for each 1% low frame. If you're one of the rare 4K ultrawide gamers, then the extra performance provided by the RTX 4080 is going to be greatly appreciated. But if you're running a 1440p super ultrawide, 1600p ultrawide, or a 1440p ultrawide, then the 4080 is just going to be a nice to have. When using the RX 7900 XT, even the 1% lows all stay above 60. And at the current price disparity of $400, you're only getting an extra 20% performance or less at these resolutions for an extra 44% cost. Now, if you're a gamer that requires 120 FPS or more in your games, then the 4080 can be justified. But you're going to still need to use AI performance enhancers at 1440p Super Ultrawide to achieve that goal. Despite the RTX 4080 being 90% faster on average, I'm going to call the Raster performance round for the RX 7900 XT. It's hitting 90 FPS or higher at our most popular ultrawide and super ultrawide resolutions. And with FSR or just turning your settings down to high, I feel like you'll be able to get both the performance and the visuals that you're looking for in most games. And you'll be able to keep a fat wad of cash in your pocket that you can put towards a new, better ultrawide monitor. But round 2 is coming, where we'll be testing ray tracing, and I feel like this is an opportunity for the RTX 4080 to turn the tables and really justify its price. Thanks for watching. I hope this video was useful to you. If it was, please like and subscribe to catch the next round in this bout, or check out my deep dives into these 2 cards. If you have any ideas for the ultrawide content I could be doing on this channel, please leave a comment below. Also, all the products I talked about are linked in the description. Thank you so much and have a great day.